It's a striking scene that captured hearts and headlines worldwide. An 81-year-old French Argentine nun, one of the Pope Francis's oldest friends, approaching his coffin, a restricted area reserved for Catholic cardinals, bishops, and priests. Only men. But no one interrupted her. Her emotional moment of personal grief outweighing centuries of protocol. And perhaps an illustration of the historic shift that Francis pioneered to elevate the position of women in the church. Joining me now, Elizabeth Lev, a Vatican author, historian, and guide. When I saw that, I thought, I don't know if anybody had a thought about going over to her, but it's almost like there was this voice saying, don't you dare.
Well, it's been a long-standing rule, especially in the square, never get between a nun and her pope. So
they really did, like 40 years or something like that, and he had nicknames for her and so on and so forth. But I think that, again, a lot of people are seeing this as an illustration of something that doesn't get talked about as much as other things that Pope Francis did. He elevated women to positions of power.
He did. There were some really major changes. But I think it's kind of interesting that his whole pontificate started with the homilies that he would give in Casa Santa Marta, always citing his grandmother. So he had this idea of the wisdom of women that we saw was ingrained into his life. And then he began to express that wisdom of women on the world stage by appointing women to these incredibly important positions, whether in art, culture, or really the life of the church.
And let's talk about the press, because I think he elevated a woman to the #2 position in the press office, and Molly Hunter spoke to her, deputy director of the Holy See press office. Here's what she told us.
The honor of my life is just the beginning. He did baby steps regarding women, top-level positions, but there's no way back.
Is there no way back?
Oh, it's going to be great. This is a whole new moment. This is really, we'll see things changing and developing and growing over the course of even the next pontificate. What are we going to do? Say, oh, no more director of the Vatican Museums as a woman, no more governatorato as the head of the governatorato, a woman. There is no going back at this point, but this is something that's been evolving anyway. From St. John Paul II, who already began to elevate women, who wrote letters to women, he began to think in terms of how can we make women more part of the life of the church. And Francis, our wonderfully practical, hands-on, get down, get to business Pope, began to look at where can we put women so that they have critical positions and they share in the governance of this enormous church.
But not as priests. There was a little bit of sort of talk at one point that Francis, maybe in some of the remote areas where they didn't have priests, he might consider it. That never really happened. So when people say maybe the next pope will allow women to be priests, what do you say?
I'm afraid that really would require a whole new look at how the church is structured and what it means to have Jesus Christ be a man, what it means to have the church be his spouse. So I really don't think the church is going to be looking at how to fundamentally change its very internal, organic concept of itself in order to change this image and create female priests.
We only have a minute left, but as I was walking this line and talking to a lot of the young people, the 70,000 who came into town essentially today, so many of them were young women. Do you think, though, that they will have a chance to change the way the church looks at women in those roles, to take the next step beyond what Pope Francis did?
I think that women have been changing the way that people look at them all over the world. I mean, whether we're looking in secular society or in the church society, we see women blossoming. This has been a century where women have been able to vote and do extraordinary things. Those same young women who are feeling this strength, their education, their wisdom, their voice, they will bring that into this church. And as Catholic women, they will find inventive ways to be able to be part of the church, to lead the church in their own individual ways. What St. John Paul II called feminine genius, and what Pope Francis put into motion by creating these great positions with these wonderful, competent women.
Well, I can see I've walked through the Vatican with you, and a lot of men stand up a little straighter when you walk by. Elizabeth Lev, thank you.